Alright, how's it going, everyone? Got a little bit of a different perspective today, a little bit different lighting, just trying some new things. Yeah, so today we're going to do something that I don't normally do, which is talk about something that I'm working on. Typically, I will not bleed the potential or give others ideas prematurely before I've had a chance to let them resonate for a long period of time, or give people ideas to quote unquote steal from me. This is all stolen information anyway, right? So what I'm going to do is read, I guess you would call it the preface or the prologue or the intro to the book that I'm working on right now. And the reason that I'm doing this, one of the reasons that I'm doing this, is because I want to get this information out. Another reason is because I want to hold myself accountable. This is something that I've been wanting to work on for a while and just have been like piecemealing here and there. So by putting it out there, like I'm sort of, it's there, it's more real. I've got to look it in the eyes. Another reason that I'm doing this is because I'm told that I have a chronic condition that will take me out at some point. We'll see. I already beat cancer one time. This is not cancer. This is something else. But I figure if I can, if I can get past that, then maybe I can get past this. It's something that's been going on for 30 years. It's not something new. It's something that I've been dealing with. But as it progresses, as I get older, I'm told that it'll eventually take me out. So we're doing what we can to put out some content while we can. And yeah, we're gonna learn, we're gonna teach, and we're gonna live. And yeah, we're gonna enjoy the time that we have. We're not gonna complain or make excuses. So I would like to share the prologue of the work that I've been working on. I haven't spent a whole lot of time on the editing or it's basically, I've showed this a few times before on the channel, but I guess I can go ahead and show it again. I had condensed a pile of notes and I actually got rid of some of them, but I had condensed a pile of notes, and I mean, some of the lines on these could be expanded to a paragraph or a page, so I'm trying to consolidate it into 2 or 3 works if I can. But if all I have is, the time to pump out one, I want it to be this one, because I feel like it's sort of a bridge between here and there, and belief and non-belief, and past and future. So the working title for this is The Elementarian, or Elemental Enhancement. Subtitle, A Grimoire of Transformation, just for those of you who like, I don't know, kitschy titles. So this is 5 or 6 pages. It's not that long at all. Okay. This is titled Prologue, but I don't know enough about writing to know whether this is a prologue or an introduction or a preface. In retrospect, it seems as though the majority of my earlier spiritual practice consisted almost entirely of poetry and or color psychology. And while that is more than enough to create a significant change in one's life, I was craving more. So I began to experiment in just about every way I was able. When I was 13, I began to experiment with cannabis and formal meditation. By 16, I could identify and locate at least 2 separate varieties of psychoactive mushrooms, agaric and psilocybe, or psilocybe. And I had began experimenting with those as well. At this point, my meditations began to take on a life of their own. By age 19, I had already ingested every type of dissociative or hallucinogen I could track down, and had almost entirely integrated most of my experiences into magical formula. But there was still an issue. All of this was nothing more than psychobabble to most. Even though I had made serious changes in my life and helped others to make changes for the better as well, no one would accept anything I was saying. How could this be? They would take my advice, it would work, but everything I believed was nonsense? That was nonsense. So I had to come up with something. I had to find a way to translate all of this. Then I realized that context was the key. What follows is, hopefully, something of a key to the different rooms of your being. If you use this information wisely and consistently, you will become closer to who you're trying to become, but you will also be able to understand how and why this process is occurring. And with this understanding, you can adapt and mold this key to fit the rooms of others, for better or worse. Sincerely, Corbin S. Greene. This is the introduction, I think. Everyone always begins with, what is magic? So I'll begin with, where is it? Where does magic even exist? Certainly not in the hearts and minds of most these days. The truth is, magic exists at every level we are consciously aware of, and probably a few other places as well. By the simple act of bringing our awareness to something, we are instigating an act of transformation, both outwardly and inwardly. That simple stick you see lying on the forest floor becomes a tool for warmth or shelter, or perhaps aggression, depending on the circumstance. We define ourselves, and therefore our surroundings continuously, just by perceiving and being aware. To partake in effective magic, we must first begin by directing our focus. Where attention goes, energy flows. But where do we direct that focus to? Some practices will begin with relaxing the body, while others will begin with the mind. Okay, so that's two places. Others speak of the astral and the etheric as well. With all of these different worlds, we're going to need a map of some sort. But let's keep it simple for now. Below is the model that we will be using for this work. You can take a screenshot here if you like. Or pause the video to read it. Is it backwards to you guys as well? It's backwards to me. I'll run over it just in case. We have the physical plane, which is represented by the element of earth. I would say that its capacity or its isness is solidarity, and its gate is materials and gesture. These are just ideas. There's more than that, obviously. Then we have the astral, represented by water, and it relates to receptivity. Its gate, or some of its gates, are memory and imagination. Then we have the etheric plane, represented by fire, which represents also or relates to creativity, and its gate is, or some of its gates are vital force and electromagnetism. Then the mental plane, represented by wind, relating to responsivity, and its gates are concepts, representations, things like that. By directing our focus toward these planes, we are inciting changes within and between them. By harmonizing them, an amalgam, often known as a zoth, is resubstantiated and available for working. Use whatever name you like. The substance acts as a catalyst for enlightenment and development. We'll begin where most people are aware these days, the mental psychic plane. This is where all thoughts are perceived. I won't go into whether they originate there or not, at least not here. We can relate this plane to the element of air or wind. Wind is expansive and readily reacts to its environment, much like the intellect does. It flows about freely, even when we are not aware of it. Just as in nature, the temperature, fire, and humidity, water, of the environment are linked with the wind. If you're lost in a daydream, water, or caught up in anger, fire, your mind, wind, is going to reflect that environment. I'm sure you can see how getting caught in an emotional daydream might have one almost, if not entirely, at the whim of their subconscious programming. Hint, hint. However, with a strong enough breeze, we can create a change in the weather system, so to speak. And with enough time, force, and consistency, the wind can begin to reshape its environment. Now, to the etheric plane, the major focus of this work, although due to the nature of things, it may not be the most written about. Paradox is part and parcel to the paranormal. Get used to it if you're not already. In my experience as a teacher and as a practitioner, this area is typically the most transformational. One reason for this is because it's often the most neglected. Another reason is because it can be extremely volatile, and we can use this to our advantage if we're careful and willing to make the necessary sacrifices in time and pleasure, as well as other places. Just as fire will consume all that is useful and accessible to it, the etheric plane will expand as you make more of yourself available to it. As you direct your focus and expand your awareness, the voids of your being will become vivified. But this also means that anything attached to the etheric field, such as emotion, image, memory, or auditory impression, will also be potential fuel to this etheric flame. Another hint. This is one reason why we can burn through one argument right into another, or disintegrate one relationship after another in a single act of instability. It's also a reason we feel so empty and consumed after a huge argument, a lot of times. Next comes the so-called astral plane. This work's minor focus. This is by far the most convoluted of the planes, largely due to our limited ability to grasp it, but also due to its relative complexity and its relative nature. Just as your kitchen is the entry to your fridge, the mind's eye is the entry to the astral plane. They are not the same thing. They are just related. This foyer, so to speak, of the astral can be considered as the upper astral, as opposed to the lower astral, which is where more real and meaningful experiences will happen. The upper region is primarily a reflection of our hourly, daily lives. It is a more solar region, as opposed to the lower astral, which is inherently more lunar in nature. When one person speaks of the astral, they could be talking about either one of these locations or another place entirely within the same space. In this work, I will refer to the upper astral plane as the mind's eye and the lower astral plane as simply the astral plane. Obviously, you can think of these solar, lunar, upper, lower, inner, outer, whatever you want. The idea is to recognize the degrees and the layers between them, so that you can dissolve them. Lastly, we arrive at the plane of physicality. This is the most obvious plane for most. It is the plane of solidarity and resource. This field involves all locations, gestures, material opponents, etc. for ritual, ceremony, and daily life. All too often, practitioners waste their time opening astral and etheric gates when they should be opening their front doors and going outside. Don't ignore the physical plane. It is a field of resource and manifestation, just like the others. We will discuss this field the least amount, but the whole purpose of this work is to instantiate the idea that using all of these fields simultaneously will greatly empower your magical practice. That is the whole purpose of this work. Let alone transform the way you perceive yourself and therefore the way you live your life on a daily basis. Understanding how to symbolically address what we perceive as separate layers of our being, mind, energy, imagination, body, etc., can help us to develop and advance in a more balanced and holistic manner. Do you ever feel like you just can't take in any more information or analyze another concept? Even then, there's still physical development that can occur. Out of juice after that last push-up, there's still a greater degree to which you can develop your concentration, or even practice no-mindedness. All out of creative ideas for the moment, practice the science of stillness. Obviously, we have to be careful of burnout and overexertion. But I'm sure you can already see how people stunt their own growth on a daily basis with the simple spell of, I'm too worn out. Use this information wisely, and you might just end up years ahead of people who began much before you. If you're unsure how much is too much or not enough, a general guide could be something like 25% study, 25% review, and 50% practice. Something of a mentor shared that information with me one time. I don't remember exactly where it came from, but it's a good place to start. However, those of you who are a little more well-read can feel free to make the practice amount much higher. Although, it's still good to learn new ideas and review what you already know, so leave some time for study and review. And yes, memory, imagination, and emotion are all related, as you're more than aware. So we should discuss that before there's too much confusion. When we're feeling extremely emotional, or operating at any extreme of our capacities for that matter, more than one element is going to become involved. Depending on your disposition and awareness, or even your degree of attunement with that element, you may notice one more than the other, or fail to notice one entirely. If this doesn't resonate you, think about a time you've been betrayed by someone you trusted. There were probably plans you were making in your mind, wind, images pouring through your imagination of the memories you shared or the things you're going to say or do the next time you see them, water, a hellish amount of energy being generated and consumed, fire, and you were probably hyperventilating, crying, stomping around, or trembling uncontrollably, earth, if not all of the above simultaneously. Tipping the scales too far causes everything to fall to one side. At first, we may be quick to place breathing in the category of wind and crying in the category of water. But these are physical manifestations and, therefore, here related to earth. Breath and tears are made of wind and water, but we're missing the larger picture here if we keep things literal. Again, learning to live outside of a concrete perspective of things will ultimately assist you in life. Now, this is where I mention the elementals and the elemental kings and queens. But it's also where I mention that they're not entirely necessary. Not every spell and working has to be performed in the most complex and grandiose manner conceivable. In the same way, not every pamphlet and tradition has to be reliant on outside forces. The beauty of this is that when you have enhanced your own abilities by exercising, experimenting, and exploring with them, you will be able to make even better contact with forces like these. Then a sort of dance begins where, due to enhanced ability, they are more able to enhance your ability to contact them and, therefore, increase their ability to guide and mentor you. Much of this work tends to be reciprocal in this manner. It's also where I raise the question of, are the elemental monarchs separate, individual beings, or the collective consciousness of all the elementals of their kind and type? Perhaps they might even be the collective positive polarity of these creatures. Now, we have another question. Is there a collective negative polarity of them as well? This is perhaps where we get the idea of siren, jinn, goblin, ghast, etc. And are the elementals even separate from us at all? Or are they just projections of our own psyche? This work may raise more questions than answers, but that's all right. There are many ways to talk and think about the so-called elementals. Just about every culture has some form of mythical creature relating to the environment. Mermaid, jinn, kobold, dragon, fairy, golem, griffin, nymph. The list is about as long as your imagination. Sometimes it is a sort of genius loci, or spirit of the place, but more commonly, it is a part of the environment in some fashion, either in pushing the grass out of its seed, helping the flame to grow, sculpting the facets of crystals, or blowing clouds together to form rain. Now we're raising another question of, are the sylphs the ones who decide which way the wind blows, or the gnomes? The wind is a physical thing after all, and we discussed how all things physical relate to Earth, typically. Would that mean the sylphs are the ones responsible for giving us new thoughts and ideas? And conversely, the ones stealing them from us here and there? Has it been the gnomes stealing your socks? Again, you'll have to find this all out for yourself if you really want to know the answer. After all, who am I for you to trust? What you will likely trust, though, is your own results and experiences. And that is precisely what I aim to give you as much as possible. The practical instructions from which you may form your own ideas and experiences if you wish to do so. And I hope that you do. Here's a list of the elemental kings and their monarchs, or the elementals and their monarchs, excuse me. And there's a note here that additional names were requested by the monarchs and you could say the elemental powers themselves for personal study and to assist in detaching them from other systems with separate paradigms and theologies. Work with them however you choose. Here we have, for the king of the sylphs, we have King Aravos. For the king of the salamanders, we have King Garasir. For the queen of the undines, we have Queen Loreliu. And for the gnomes, we have Queen Nifroda. You might recognize the names that they are also known by. This is for those of you who want to work separately from a paradigm that already exists. These names have worked very well, actually better for me personally than Peralta, Jin, Nixa, and Gob. It's up to you. So that is it for this one, I believe. A lot of ideas in this one. Let me know what you think. Still working on it. It's probably going to be a while before it's done, but maybe not. It might not need to be as complicated as I'm thinking that it should be. So yeah, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for listening. Have a good rest of the day, good rest of the week, and I will talk to you in the next one. Thanks.